Hi, welcome to Symax Fintech Weekly Technical Analysis. This is designed just to try and help you as much as possible. And my name is Chris Tubby. So first of all, our disclaimer, trading obviously involves the risk of loss of capital. It's not suitable for everyone. Hopefully it is for you though. And of course, if companies are providing leverage, you need to be aware that you can lose substantially more than your initial investment. All the views, opinions, everything here, basically they're mine, Chris Tubby. All I'm trying to do is just help you. It's educational purposes only. We're not trying to provide investment advice or to encourage you to trade or invest. That has to be your decision. And you have to consider all the risks, your financial situation, definitely your level of experience, and only, of course, risk capital that you're prepared, but more importantly, that you can afford to lose. If you've got any doubts whatsoever, make sure you seek financial advice before risking your capital. So I've just put together a few slides and it's just sort of preparing you for the week ahead. I'm not trying to again just say with this level or that level. What I'm doing is just going through them and just, you can make your own decisions just from seeing these. So starting with the Dow Jones, and it's on a daily. I've also added Fibonacci levels, and I've also added where I see potentially support and resistance lines. I try and match up 3 points as much as possible. I much prefer that to just two, but it is showing you trend. And of course, the stocks had a quite a good substantial sell-off towards the end of last week. Although, it's nothing from where you think where they've come from since March 2020. The other thing to bear in mind, obviously, is that central banks are no longer there to hold our hand for when we have these sell-offs because they've completed all their quantitative easing now and they're actually looking to start to tighten. So this is the Dow on a 30-minute. On here, I've added the pivot levels. So I'm not sure if you're aware of pivot points. Always feel free to reach out. Our details are on the final slide if you're not familiar with anything that I'm showing and you'd like to know more. And of course, here again on the 30-minute, I've added a support and resistance lines. Moving on to the S&P, again, it's a daily to start with. I've identified support and resistance. That's sort of the deep red or maroon colours. Again, the Fibonacci levels are on there. Of course, they've broken through the golden ratio now, so now it's going to be quite interesting to see where the market opens later this evening or tomorrow, depends when you start your trading week. This is the 30-minute S&P, and again, I've left the Fibonacci levels on there. It sort of held the blue line for quite some time, and then once it broke through there later in the day, it never sort of got back for a retest apart from the next candle, and then it's just finished very weak. Again, be interesting to see how sort of Monday develops. This is still the S&P. This is again still on a 30-minute chart, but here I've added the pivot points on. Again, if you're not familiar with pivot points, please feel free to reach out to us and we can explain them to you or help you with them at least. They're used by traders and have been for decades, and they've been quite good, especially recently as the technicals have come much more into play. The solid blue line is the pivot, and then from there we can sort of develop. This is first resistance level, which we call R1, then there's R2, and below we've got S1 and S2. Obviously the market broke through them on Friday. You can develop S3 and S4 as well. You just have to calculate them. The Nasdaq on a daily. So again here, since I've managed to sort of identify a sort of almost a downtrend at the moment. I've got this top line that's sort of coming from way back there, and this is, don't forget, on a daily, and then I've got a support line much lower down, and I've managed to get a second resistance line in, as you can see from the pointer just there as well. and these are the fib levels again, so it's sort of broken through them at the moment. So it's, you know, maybe let's wait and see. This is the Nasdaq on a 30-minute. Again, I've added the pivot point levels onto here. It's broken through. Actually, for the Nasdaq, it was pretty good on Friday because it held just above the S2, which is the support level 2 down here. And it sort of coincides with this support line that I've drawn in there. Again, I've got a resistance line higher up there, and I've managed to identify another resistance line about halfway down from there as well. I don't know if any of you trade the Russell 2000, but I've added it anyway. It's something, you know, we look at all markets, so I just thought I'd add this one in as well. And here, this is again on the daily, put on the Fibonacci levels. I've also drawn in here a support level and a resistance level for you. This is the Russell 2000 on a 30-minute chart, and here I've added, again, as with most of the 30 minutes, I've added pivot points on. This one sort of just on Friday, it's sort of got sticky right at the end of the day around this S2. So, you know, it is going to be interesting to see if this sort of bearish end to last week continues tomorrow or not. Now, what I've done here is I've sort of done a correlation between the ones that we've just been through. So we've got the Dow, the S&P, the Nasdaq, and the Russell, each one of them. And again, you know, the colour of the line relates to where it finishes on the chart, where I've labelled them. And you can tell by the prices anyway, to be honest with you. As you can see, they're pretty much mirroring each other. You know, obviously the tech is either having that little bit more success or that little bit more weakness at times. But in general, the trend is pretty much the same for each of them. So I just thought you may find that interesting. And here's another interesting one. So this is the Nasdaq against Bitcoin, and you know, there's been more and more sort of talk about the way that they're sort of following each other. They're becoming more correlated. So I just thought you may like to see that. So the Nasdaq is the black line, and Bitcoin is the red line. You know, again, the correlation is sort of quite a loose thing. It's not necessarily going to be point for point, tick for tick. You know, it's just a general trend as opposed to sort of really following each other every single point and every single second of the day. And that moves us on to Bitcoin. So I've just added again one for here. So I've added the Fibonacci levels on for the daily. I've also identified a resistance level and also a support line for the moment as well. And the interesting thing here as well is you know, probably, I don't know if you're trading Bitcoin, but if you was, we had that sell-off some time ago now in January, and it came down, and it was pretty nice actually, because it just virtually, again, it depends how you sort of interpret, because you know, charts and technical analysis very much down to your interpretation, a little bit subjective. So, however, but you know, when they had this sell-off, it was really nice because it closed this gap. Just depends on how you take that gap. You know, whether you take it from the open to the close or the close to the open, or whether you just take it from each end of the candles, the wicks themselves. So again, you know, different people look at that different ways, but it's just sort of highlight, you know, you should be looking for these things at times, because that was a really great opportunity. And then, of course, we had a nice rally after that. So, again, just got a slight downtrend at the moment, as we seem to have with a lot of the products from towards the end of last week. But, you know, Monday's a new day, a new week, so let's see what's going to happen. This is the 30-minute Bitcoin. So again, I've added the pivot point levels on. You know, pivot points do work. I'm not saying that they work every time, or perfectly, but and again, that interpretation comes into it. I mean, if you look at Thursdays, it was lovely. It sort of come back up, had a good rally, and here it was sort of, it really struggled to get through R2, and then it had a wonderful sell-off and came back to actually test the pivot point. And then, of course, on it closed weaker, and then on Friday it continued that weakness again. Moving on to gold. So gold daily, and on here again I've added the Fibonacci levels. It's great when you've had these moves and corrections coming in, because it does give a chance to use Fibonacci just to sort of try and get an idea. And of course here we see the golden ratio is sort of holding in quite well for the moment. On Friday it came down to test the 50 level, whether I mean by 50 on the Fibonacci, not 50 for the price, of course. But we'll have to wait and see what's going to happen Monday. Gold does seem to be quite ranging. I've got my own levels in my head, but I'm just doing this purely for analysis, so unfortunately I'm not going to share them with you. The gold on the 30-minute, again, pivot points. It's sort of held within these last two, which is really nice. And I've managed to identify it almost sort of like we've got this descending highs coming down, putting it under pressure. But it's sort of going to sort of make a breakout one way or the other by the looks of it very soon. Possibly this week. We'll have to wait and see. WTI, sure some of you are probably following that. So I've managed to get a very good resistance line in there from the high, and also a recent high anyway for sure, and then support line. Again, added the Fibonacci levels. At the moment we're sort of still above all of those, but again, this week, who knows? Oil's been quite volatile, so we may see some more major moves, some more corrections. Again, part of that depends on what's going on with the Russia invasion of Ukraine, and of course, how everybody's sourcing their oil. This is the 30-minute chart, so we've got the pivot points on. It's sort of on Friday it broke through the S1, and then it sort of just held mid-range between S1 and S2 for the rest of the day. Again, managed to put in some support and resistance levels for you there, just to give you an idea of something that might be useful for the coming week.